Hello, everybody, and welcome back from my 2-week hiatus because of final exams to the Create Your Own Nancy Drew Game podcast. This week I am with Alyssa, and Alyssa, your blog name is
JOEHARDYSDRIFT.
yes, and your main is Seriously Diggories, right?
Yeah, that's
Cool.
me.
So like if she follows you, it's from Seriously Diggories, but that's her indie blog. Um, so my first question, Alyssa, is how long have you been playing the games for?
I think I had to have been like first grade at the oldest.
First grade. Wow, that's young.
Yeah, I know. Well, I played them with my mom at first. We lived right next to this library that had Message in a Haunted Mansion that you could like check out.
Yeah.
And that was the first one that we played because I begged her to get it and I have no idea why. I just really wanted to. And it terrified me
That's
because I was
scary. Yeah.
like 6 and the stairs were creaking and there were ghosts everywhere. But that was how we got started, and then until I was about 13, we played them together and catch up on them, and then I started playing them with my best friend. So it's been a long ride.
Do you have like lucid memories of playing the games in first grade, or were you just kind of like, I think it was first grade? Because like
I
I
don't
have memories of like my first time playing, but I was much older than that. I was like 10 or 11 years old. Um,
I have very lucid memories of the seance
yeah, from like
because
first grade seancing. Yeah,
yeah. Well, because when we started playing them, it was my mom that was controlling everything, and I was mostly just watching because I was too young to know what I was
like
doing.
yeah, like sitting on her lap and she's kind of like playing.
Basic- Basically. So I have memories of that and of like the jump scares and everything like that.
Hmm.
But I don't have lucid memories of like figuring things out for myself until I was a little bit older than that.
Right, gotcha. What is your favorite game?
Um, well, right now and like since the last year and everything, it's become Blue Moon Canyon.
Oh yes, that's my top three for sure.
I think it is probably mine too. Like it's just like such a comfort game, and every time I think about it, it's like peak Nancy Drew.
I
And
know, and just the way like the characters are related, like they're all like detectives, it's just fun.
yeah,
And
and it's also like on a train, so it's like that classic mystery anyway.
yeah, and actually one of the things I like about it is that it's not all on a train. Like, there's the part
Yeah,
where you're in Copper Gorge, so it's like, you're gonna go into it thinking that you're gonna be on the train the whole time, and that's kind of boring. But then they're like, no,
right.
we're gonna throw Copper Gorge in, and then we're gonna go to the end game sequence in the mine. So, but I like the train vibe is amazing, especially when I don't know if you've ever triggered this part of the game because this always happens to me when like Camille's ghost is like flying outside the window. You know what I'm talking
Oh
about?
yeah,
Like you
yeah.
you have to like look at the picture in where Charlena is, and she'll talk about how like Camille used to dance, and that like when she died, Jake thought that he saw her dancing outside the train, and then you like go to the sleeping car, and outside the window, like she's like dancing. It's so creepy and so cool, and
I had actually. Sorry,
yeah,
I keep cutting you
no,
off.
you're fine. But just go ahead.
I actually forgot that she did that until the last time I played it a few
Yeah.
months ago, and when I turned and saw it, I felt like I was having a heart attack because I'd forgotten that it was going to trigger.
Yeah, but it's like crystallized. So it's like, it's not like a actual like phantom like Thornton Hall, but it's like crystallized. And
Yeah.
just the way that they're all related and they're like all there for the same reason and like it's just so thought out and well drawn out as a game. And it's just I could play it like the rest of my life and not get bored.
Oh, same.
Like
And
it's just so and like it's the inspiration for like my dream game, which is the one on the cruise with like everybody is a bunch of famous writers, and Charlene is also there, and so like she invites Nancy onto the cruise with all the writers. Um, but anyway, yeah. So I love Train just with all my heart. It's like top three for me as well.
I think
Um,
my other favorite is probably Alibi and Ashes, which I know isn't super popular,
really,
but
because
there's
I
just
think that
something.
it is. I feel like it is just because of where it takes place. I don't know.
Yeah, like I get mixed reviews on it. Sometimes I get into certain circles of like the fandom where people really like it and others where people don't. I like that you get to play as everybody, and it's where you meet Alexi, who is one of my top 10 characters.
Yeah, but I think one gripe that I have is that, everything that besides, like, the characters and because like, Deirdre likes Ned, and Deirdre will tell Ned more than, like, everybody else will, but, like, nothing else really besides what character, like, tells more to whom, nothing's really different, but depending on who you play as in the game, the conversations are exactly the same, like, on the phone,
Yeah,
and,
that's true.
like, so that was kind of one of my gripes, and plus you, like, never saw Ned, which also sucked, like, you saw Bess and George, why not Ned?
I know.
Um,
It's
but,
so
like
funny to me. He's like the one core character we haven't seen yet.
yeah, him and Carson, yeah. Um, and it's just like, because nothing really is different when you're, like, trying to change characters on the phone or depending on who you talk to, it just depends on, like, if it's, like, Deirdre and your Ned or if it's, like, Tony and your Bess, whatever. Um, but that's also one of my favorite games, and I think that part of it is because of where it's set and how, like, just everybody's always wanted to have her do a mystery in River Heights. So, I remember when it came out, I was super excited for it. Yeah. Have you read the books?
I haven't read any of like the classic yellow covers. I think I read some of the more recent ones when they were coming out when I was in middle school,
Yeah,
but I
me
don't
too.
remember them very well.
Because the newer ones are the ones, like, most of the games are drawn from.
Yeah.
Like, those the classics, of course, like, some of them, like, Old Clock is, like, the first 3 books combined, but, like, a lot of the games are taken from the later books. So, I read, like, the ones that are based off of or that the games are based off of, but not, like, just the general ones that don't
Right.
really have a connection to the games.
It's funny because I haven't read any of the classic ones, but a few years ago I started finding really old copies of the yellow books from like the 30s and the 40s and stuff, so I've been collecting them, but I haven't started reading any of them yet.
Yeah, right.
They're just sitting in my room waiting for me.
It's collecting dust. Have you seen a TV show or one of the movies that have came out about the character?
I saw the movie with Emma Roberts when it came
Yeah,
out,
yeah,
which at the time I thought was the greatest thing I'd ever seen because
I
I
did
was
too.
10.
And then I played
And
the games, and I was like, "No,
yeah.
the games are better." Yeah,
And I loved it. And then I was a little older than that, and we found the Nancy Drew show from the 70s, and
right.
I was obsessed with it. And that's Sean Cassidy is still how I picture Joe in my head when I'm playing the games because it's just burned into my memory.
Yeah. I haven't seen the '70s show.
Oh, it's so good.
I've heard, like, everybody that I've talked to loves it. I've seen the Emma Roberts movie, and, that's about it. But I watched that movie religiously as a kid, like, so many times, and then I played the games, and I just was like, "This is kinda better than the movie."
Oh, definitely.
And then yeah. So that was my journey with the movie. But every time, like, so far, every episode, people have been like, "I saw that movie," and I'm like, "Yes," 'cause that was a nostalgic movie.
I think it's quintessential for all of us
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
we all saw it and went through that phase.
Right. 'Cause that was, like, still during, like, the early games or so. I would say, like, by,
Yeah.
like, game, like, 10 or 11 that came out. Um, now it's like so now that really helped us develop our current love, I guess.
It was right in that sweet spot of all the good games coming out.
Right, like Shadow Ranch and Curse of Blackmore Manor and stuff, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So my last kind of icebreaker question is, what are your outside stands besides the games and the fandom?
Um, I'm not super active in any other fandoms other than the Nancy Drew one because they scare me because
Right,
people are
yeah,
aggressive. But
absolutely.
uh, I've gotten really into this show from Sci-Fi called The Magicians in the last few years.
The Magicians.
Yeah, it's so good. It's one of the best shows that has representation of everybody, of like, the LGBTQ community and like people of color and everything.
Yeah, totally.
It's amazing, and my roommate got me into it when I was living with her, so I go back and watch it every few months because it's become one of those, like, comfort things. And then I write a lot. I've been
Oh,
trying to
yeah.
get back into writing. I was really big into writing.
Like
Got
books or like stories or
Stories. My dream is to write a book and like publish one. It's just like with everything that's been going on in the world, it's been really easy to get blocked. But
And it's so much work to write a book.
like I always get stuck about halfway through it and forget what I'm trying to accomplish too.
Yeah, it's so much work. It's crazy. Like um, you have to like know what you want. Like even if you know what you want at the beginning and the end of the book, like the middle is when you get stuck. But like if you
Oh, it's the worst.
also like if you don't plan it out before, you're not going to get anywhere. So it's kind of hard, you know?
Yeah, and I hate doing the planning it out too because
Yeah,
you get stuck there too. Like after you get a few things through it, you forget what you're trying to even figure out how to fill the time with.
exactly. It's so difficult. I'm going to be a screenwriter, and it's not easier with that either. It's just as hard. So I know what you mean. So I think it's time now that we talk about your dream game for the series. Um,
Okay.
and we'll start with like the generic mystery and plot. Like, what's the main mystery that's happening here? Like, how did she stumble across it? Is it based off of something that inspired you to do it like that, or what's going on here?
Well, this came around at like the perfect time because I had just spent 3 months in my hometown, so I was kind of nostalgic for it.
Right,
But so the premise of this is that Nancy's going to go back to St. Louis, but she's actually going to see some of the city instead of being inside a theater the whole time.
right.
And she gets called back because of Maya, because Maya is going to come back. And
Oh, yay.
so Maya is a recent grad from Wash University, and she's about to cover a new piece being revealed in the sculpture park in St. Louis, and she's invited Nancy down to come be part of that celebration with her. And when
Awesome.
Nancy gets there, she finds out that pieces from the sculpture park have been vandalized in the week leading up to this premiere.
Yeah.
And there are threats coming out of more things that are going to happen. And when she gets there, Maya asks her to help figure out what's going on so that this can still happen.
Oh, good. So Maya's not kidnapped. I thought you were gonna say Maya
No.
kidnapped again, and I was like, she just cannot catch a break.
I think
Oh,
Maya's deserved a nice trip with Nancy where she's not the victim.
and she's just helping out. Yeah, because I was about to be like, she has about as good of a luck as Nancy does getting clobbered. Uh,
Yeah.
um. So here's where I'm like, oh my god, because the final scene is also in my top 3 favorite games. Just
Oh, mine
because
too.
I'm a theater kid, and so just like having it be in a theater is amazing to me. Um, Even though it was like a movie theater, but still, like, you get to go backstage and in the dressing
Yeah.
rooms and everything, so, like, I loved that. But the whole time I was like, this doesn't necessarily have to be in St. Louis, Missouri. It could be literally anywhere. Like, I mean, they say that it's in St. Louis, but, like, we're just in the theater the whole time. We don't really have just that picture of Maya in front of the arch, but, like, that's really it. Um,
Exactly.
so it's like, maybe that there was a way that they could have done that a bit better, and then here you are with, like, "Let's go back with her and have her not be kidnapped and have, a totally different kind of mystery here." Okay, great. So, you already said it's set in St. Louis,
Mhm.
um, and are you imagining, like, it's, like, hot St. Louis, cold St. Louis? Like, what do you think, like, time of year this is?
I'm thinking like early September, so the summer is fading out and the fall is coming in, so you've got like that sweet spot of weather of like the 60s.
Right.
And the leaves are starting to change colors, and it's so pretty in St. Louis that time of year, which helps because a lot of the game's going to take place outside, so to kind of help encapsulate that feeling of being in the early autumn.
Yeah, so it's, like, almost fall, but not quite summer still, and when everything
Yeah,
is nice and awesome. And I'm assuming it's, modern day because Maya just graduated and,
yeah.
awesome. Um, great. So I guess well, let's go ahead and talk about, like, the general locations you can visit in the game before we get into the characters. Like, what,
Okay.
locations do you see her going to, and what are they like?
So the big one is Laumeier Sculpture Park, which is a really big outdoor park where you basically just walk a trail and look at all the different sculptures that are there.
Oh, nice.
And there's like an art center there that you can go into and get information, but you basically just take like an hour walk outside and see all of the artwork. So obviously, because some of the sculptures have been vandalized, that's a big place. So there's a few different pieces of art that are actually there that I could see being in the game.
Right.
Like there's a face in the ground that you can walk into, and there's a giant eyeball. And the only reason I think the eyeball should be in the game is so that Nancy can make a comment about flashbacks to Bruno Beaulet's house.
Okay, literally, oh my god, you have guessed my top 3 games already. They are Shine, Cry, and Fin. So, like, you like wow, we have already got my 3 favorite games already. But yeah, so there's just a giant eye. She's like, "Oh, that reminds me of that time I found, like, 20 of those."
Yeah, and I almost feel like you'd have to include the eye at that point for a nod
Yeah.
to that night. And just like a couple different places in the park to visit and go into the art center and talk to the guy running the place. And then
Yep.
and then there's also Forest Park in St. Louis, which is pretty much all free. It's where our zoo and the art museum and everything is. But there's a pavilion that's still standing there from the World's Fair in the 20s. And I thought it would be cool if Nancy could go visit the pavilion and kind of just see another piece of history, see another park that's out there.
Yeah.
And then also just her hotel room, because I feel like hotel rooms are quintessential to a lot of Nancy Drew games.
Yeah, I feel like that more so in the, older games, because like, she always was in one of the older games. But then I guess the last one she actually was in one was Silent Spy, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
But then, like, but up until that point, like, they were totally gone.
It was
So
such a weird gap too.
yeah. Yeah, because I mean, obviously, like, she was in all over the country, so, like, she had to, like, have hotel rooms, but she never, like, really went there. Because most of these games, honestly, like, take place in, like, the span of a day, because time never changes. Um,
Time is an illusion in the Nancy Drewverse.
yes, time is not real. So those are your main locations with quite a few nods to other games, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So the next section is, of course, characters. What characters are there? If you have names for them, if not, I'll help you with that, or genders, orientations, and or if any of them are like connected to each other, like related or work together or whatever. And then like if there's anything that maybe makes them suspicious, which would make Nancy suspicious of them, go ahead and share that, and we'll just see what you got.
So I couldn't think of names for a lot of them because I'm always really bad at not using the same generic names I use for everything.
Right.
But we have Maya,
Maya, yes, of course.
who invites Nancy to come to this premiere and doesn't tell Nancy until she gets there that there's something she needs help investigating.
Classic.
And so she's there, and then we have the guy running the sculpture park who, the best way I could think of to explain him was that John Mulaney bit where he refers to himself as a 28-year-old man trying his best.
You're right.
I don't know why. That just seems like that's how I picture him in my mind, is that anxious kind of John Mulaney vibe.
My man.
And
Yes.
I vision him as having recently taken over running the park, and this new piece that's going to be revealed was part of a contest he had set up to bring new artists in, and it's his first big thing and it's all going wrong. So he's very stressed out and he doesn't know if he's going to make it. And so a lot of your conversations with him are him forgetting things that he's told you because he's in that space of being so stressed that he can't remember his own name.
Yeah, that is relatable.
That's where I've been. So he like asks for help with all sorts of stuff, which is how Nancy would get a lot of her chores and trying to help him. And then next character would be the artist whose work is about to be displayed. And I feel like they pretty much I just forgot how words worked for a second. They submitted a piece of work mostly to see if they could get validation in their work because they were mostly nervous about not being a good artist and they wanted to see if they had what it took. And then when they won, they were really surprised. So they were excited, but they were too nervous to hang out in the park leading up
Right.
to it. And they won't tell anybody what art they did get into the park. They won't get like it's all super secretive what the sculpture is going to be, so Nancy has to kind of figure that out. And I think that they were probably hanging out in the pavilion that I mentioned so that they can still kind of be part of the like artsy history of St. Louis without being in the area that they're nervous about.
Yeah.
And they're really shy and really quiet and they don't really understand how they won, but I think Nancy can figure out that they're hiding something because it's very obvious when they speak that they're not telling the whole truth. And the way that they talk about winning, it's always kind of, you can tell that something's being held back.
Absolutely.
And
Um,
then, sorry, you go.
so I guess we probably should give these people names just so we can have them for reference. Um, so for the artist chick, um, it's not Poppy Dada because that's taken by another artist in the games.
Yeah,
Let's just call her like Heather. I don't know. Does Heather work for you?
Heather, that
Yeah.
works great.
Okay. And then the other guy, you don't have a name for either?
No, I almost feel like it should be John just because of the John Mulaney energy
Let's do
radiating off of
John.
him.
So John and Heather. Yeah. Cool. I love how you
And
were
then
like, you don't want to give them generic names, but yet here we are doing that anyway.
it's fine.
Yeah.
And then the last character is another artist, and it's the artist who was beat out by Heather, who
Ooh.
submitted. So they submitted a piece and they didn't win, but they're very intense about art and they've made it very obvious that like this is their entire life. So they're really angry that they didn't win. And
Yeah.
they kind of trash talk Heather to Nancy and they say things about how they don't understand how this person who's so quiet and doesn't really speak was able to pull off something like this.
Right. Yeah.
Kind
Which
of bring
makes
out the antagonism between suspects.
yeah, makes it very suspicious. Wow. Um, so I feel like this person should have a name that like a super like jealous type name. Um, so kind of is this male or female? Do you think
Thinking female.
female?
Yeah.
I I like the name like Felicity maybe
Oh, I
or
like that.
you like Felicity? Okay,
Yeah.
so we got John Mulaney, Heather Heather McKay, and then Felicity. Uh, so perfect. Um, great. So, also in this section, we can talk about if you have any ideas for some phone friends, maybe. Who would they be?
Ew. Well, I feel like you have to have Bess and George,
Of course.
and in part because I feel like we've been cheated a lot in recent games of those like iconic conversations where the two of them are together.
Yeah, because like when they used to, in the old games, like the Hardy Boys and then Best of George, they would like only have one phone line. So
Yeah,
now they have now in the newer games, they have the Hardy Boys don't, but like Best and George have separate phone lines now. So it's like it's a lot more weird if they were together on a phone line.
which is such a shame because those conversations were some of my favorites. Like when
Um,
Bess was trying to learn how to cook and George was roasting her the entire time.
yeah, and the one where they're playing where not there's one where they're playing Go Fish. I think that's Sucre of the Scarlet Hand, and there's also one where like Bess gets caller ID, and George keeps
Oh
putting
yeah.
because you're not trying to talk to nobody you don't want to talk to. It's so funny.
And I think that here the girls it would kind of be like Shadow at the Water's Edge where they're in St. Louis doing all of these things because they were invited to come celebrate Maya's first big story, but you don't get to see them. So Nancy's conversations with them are always things like Bess asking her questions about things in the city that Nancy hasn't gotten to experience yet.
Yeah, like the convention in Shadow at the Water's Edge. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
So like every other conversation is Bess talking to Nancy about the ice cream in St. Louis, and Nancy's like, "I'm trying to do something here."
Yeah, like I'm trying to solve a mystery. I do think though that for this game, it would be really cool if like Poppy Dada was a phone friend. Just because this game gives me super like, artsy vibes and I just think that might be interesting. Well, I don't know though.
It's actually funny you should say that because she's on my list of people you have to call.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, perfect. I am just going very well here. So she is on the phone list. Cool. Great.
Yeah, and I figure that is like it's either Felicity or Heather. One of them gives Nancy her number because they've met through the art crowd, and she gives Nancy information on the park and how since John took over the sculpture park, things have felt a little weird. So she kind of helps draw suspicion onto him a little bit.
Right.
Because I think if you're gonna have a game with really out there art, you have to talk to Papi Dada.
Exactly. That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, absolutely.
And we also have the Hardy Boys on the phone list too.
Yes, okay, but they're gonna have also one phone line because those are also iconic conversations.
Of course. And and I had gone back and forth on whether I wanted to include them or not. And then I remembered that one conversation they have in the Deadly Device where Joe's really mad that Deirdre's getting credit with her professor for helping out because he recovered lost art and didn't.
Yeah, that one, yeah. I know what you
So
mean.
I think that she can call them and get hints. Also, I thought it would be really funny if the boys were also on assignment somewhere, but every single time they called Nancy, Joe had a new fact about another sculpture in the park.
Yeah.
So
That's
he's like looking up the park map and finding facts about things instead of actually working.
Yeah, he keeps interrupting. That's funny. That's so funny. I love Joe is my boy. I am Joe all the way. Always will be. Um, but he has a drift, as they might say.
And his brother is saddled with it.
Yes, he is. Uh, yes, he sure is. Um, so we've got Best George, Frank, Joe, and Poppy. Is that it?
Yes.
Cool. A very great bunch. I've always wondered like what Poppy looks like. Do you have an
I
idea what
know.
she might look like?
I think that the only thing that I know with perfect clarity is I think that she probably has really dramatic hair.
I was gonna say like pink hair. Yeah, like pink.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
bright purple or something. Like she's always changing her hair to another really bright color.
I've always okay, so I don't know how familiar you are with Harry Potter.
So
Um,
very.
okay, good. So she always gives. I've always felt like she looks like Tonks.
I can see that. Yeah.
but like the book Tonks with like the spiky hair, and not like the movie Tonks. Because like the book Tonks's hair was like spiky and like um very like emo, but
Oh
like
yeah.
the movie Tonks's was longer. Um, but like constantly like I mean she can't literally like change her hair color like Tonks can, but like just constantly looking different like Tonks does. Which is awesome.
I feel like Poppy Dada is the kind of person that every time you go see her, she looks drastically different.
Yeah, right. And then her father, Henry Daddle, is just like, that's my girl.
He probably helps her pay for some of her hair changes.
Yeah. He's like, I'm gonna do it anyway because she's going places with her art.
It's for her art.
Yes. With her deadly midnight snack pieces of art. Uh, oh, mercy. That's funny. So my next section, we can either like come back to it or whatever when we talk about like the way that the game is ran through. But are there any like drastic puzzles that you know that you want to have in this game? Like, are there puzzles that um look like other puzzles we've seen, or like is there any like puzzles that you're like for sure I want to have in this game that you might have thought of?
I actually did think of a few. I struggled a little bit with thinking of like the specifics of all of them.
Yeah, just a general like description will be fine.
I thought that because our curator is so stressed out and he's going to be giving Nancy things to do that like maybe at some point in trying to set up this event like the vendors organize where they're all going to be and he can't figure it out so he gives it to Nancy and it's kind of like those seeding logic puzzles from other games
Yeah,
because it's also one of the puzzles that I really enjoy doing so I thought it would be fun to add that in there.
absolutely.
Or maybe because she's going to different locations have like a map system like Shadow at the Water's Edge where she has to figure out how to get from point A to point B.
Right. Yep. I know exactly what you mean. That first time I played that game, I got so confused at that part. I'm like, why
Oh,
can't
so did I.
where am I supposed to not only where am I supposed to go, but like how do I get there? It was hard. It was difficult. And then I
Still
looked
kind
at
of
the
hard.
journal, and it's right there in the journal, and it's like, oh, okay, that's where Yumi is. It was
And then I figure because if there's going to be someone at the pavilion, maybe they're hiding something. So maybe when they leave, Nancy gets to like do a slider puzzle on the bench or something to open up and find a clue.
I love slider puzzles.
I have a love-hate relationship with them, but they're classic Nancy Drew, so I feel like there needs to be one.
Yep. And then eventually, like, they were like all over the original games, and then like Seven Ships came along, and they did the slider puzzle that's also a jigsaw puzzle, and then
Oh,
Thornton Hall came along that did the slider puzzle where you got to push in like it's got to align with the levers, and you push down the levers. Um, so it's like they just keep them coming with like, oh, this might be a slider puzzle, but maybe not. Also at the same time.
they kept making them more and more complicated.
Yeah, it's like, why would they do that to us? As frequently as they are in the games, like, just keep them the same, you know?
Yeah.
My goodness. Wow. Um, so this next part, I just kind of like want you to describe the order, like, that if you were playing the game right now, like the order that the like events would progress in, like from the very beginning, like what's the first thing that happens? Like, does she get off a bus? Like, does Maya meet her somewhere? Like, what's the first thing that you see all the way to the stop where like the culprit comes out, pretty much, if you can.
As we established, I'm really bad at thinking of things that happen in the middle, so I
Right.
pretty much just have like big moments of things that would have to happen.
That's fine.
The way I would see it starting is like either Maya picks her up from the airport or she gets off a bus or something, and then that first scene, it's really late at night and they're in Nancy's hotel room.
Yep.
Because the way I see it with Maya is that she's a phone friend, but she's also for certain hours like hanging out in Nancy's hotel room to like do recon with her and tell her different things. That first night is Maya kind of filling her in on what's going on and how long things are being vandalized and trying to like get her up to speed on what's happening. So she's telling Nancy all the lowdown, and then Nancy goes to sleep. And the next morning, the first thing Nancy has to do is go to the art center to talk to John and kind of get his take on everything that's been going on.
Yeah, gotcha.
That first conversation, he's really frazzled and can't remember if he hired her or if she's a guest. So it's a lot of her having to explain what's going on, even though he's the one that should be telling her what's going on.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Because all of his staff has pretty much vanished, so he doesn't know who works for him or where he is.
He's just like, at this point, I'm just vibing.
This may as well happen.
Yes.
If he spoke only in John Mulaney quotes, I think it would be hilarious, even though it definitely should not be a thing that happens.
Right, that would be amazing. That like, just imagining, and I can't quit imagining that he looks just like John Mulaney now.
No.
So it's like,
The first thing I thought of for him was that description, and then all I could see in my head was John Mulaney for the rest of the time. I was trying to figure out who he is.
and he's like at the computer and he gets stuck. So he's like, I don't like robots thinking of things.
Yes.
and, and it's like, that sounds familiar to me. Oh my gosh, because John Mulaney definitely exists in this universe.
He has to. And on that note, I think it's only fitting that Joe references John Mulaney bits every time Nancy brings this guy up.
Yes. Like, I bet like Joe will be like, I bet this guy looks just like John Mulaney, and Nancy will be like, actually, about that. Oh my
So
gosh.
Joe's in the background annoying Frank, trying to be like, we gotta go to St. Louis.
Yes, he might be there. Oh, it's so funny.
So when she's talking to John that first day, he's like kind of telling her about the contest and how he implemented it, and he's telling her where she can probably find both of the artists if she wants to talk to them. And basically, he's giving her information that he's not processing, he's talking about. She kind
Yeah.
of gets their names, and then it's a case of trying to like look around the park, and she kind of sees some of the pieces that have been damaged, and then she finds Felicity, I think we said her name was. And
Yeah, for the
she's
sun.
hanging out. She's hanging out in the park, even though she didn't win. And she kind of gives Nancy the impression that she's angry, but she doesn't want to leave because she thinks that she deserves to be there, even if they don't think her art deserves to be there. So right off
Right.
the bat, she's a ray of sunshine.
A ray of sun.
Nothing,
Yeah.
nothing but anger the whole time.
That
So Nancy,
that's funny. I hate characters like that.
I know. I almost feel like you
Little-
kind of have to have one. So,
Yeah, just because they're the worst. Yeah.
so she's there and she's telling Nancy things about the park, and she mentions that she doesn't think Heather should be there and all this other stuff. And so then the next thing on Nancy's list is obviously to, like, after she's done at the park, go to the pavilion, see if she can find anything. She meets Heather and she talks to her. I can't think of a better place to put this other than one of the benches in the pavilion, but I think it would be really funny if there was a newspaper talking about how Brady Armstrong's Tinseltown is a failure.
Yes. There was um there it's one of the Doshare games in the end. Have you played the Doshare games?
I think I've watched one of them. I don't think I've played them.
Oh my gosh, well, the end game sequence in one of them talks about how Brady is going to be in another movie, I think. So like that automatically like made me think that his because he's going back to being a movie star again. Um, I can't remember which Doche game it is though, but yeah, so like that's definitely canon that happened.
So there's a newspaper that references like food and stuff, but like the headline is that his Tinseltown is failing.
And now it's gonna be like a McDonald's or something in that
Yeah,
theater,
that's perfect.
or I Spirit Halloween.
And they have his chicken costume on display as the
Yeah,
biggest sale item.
because Spirit Halloween always takes the abandoned buildings and turns really
Of
quickly and turns
course.
them into Spirit Halloweens. So that's what happened here.
Like the renovated theater is thriving and Tinseltown is failing and it's selling all of the costumes that Simone put him in.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that's so funny.
So
So
she's like talking to everybody and she finds out that Poppy Dada knows a lot about the art world, and then you start to kind of find things, and Poppy mentions that she knew the curator before John took over, and it seems like things are running really weird now, which I feel like coming from Poppy says a lot,
right.
considering that she liked Taylor Sinclair. But you start to kind of learn things, and it's around this point that when Nancy's investigating, she starts to find clues, like any of them really could have done it. There's angry letters in the pavilion that are pretty accusatory towards Heather of having done something suspicious to get her art winning spot.
Which makes sense, yeah. That makes a lot of sense. That's
So,
really suspicious.
yeah, so Nancy starts to find things, and in that little slider that she opens up in the bench, she finds a key to the art center. So she starts to wonder if she's been breaking in to like get information on how to destroy things. When she mentions it, Heather's like adamant that she didn't do it, which we all know is pretty much a lie every time it happens.
Yep, definitely.
There's no proof otherwise. And while this is all happening, Maya's also kind of trying to investigate, but she's not an investigative journalist, so it's not going well. So Nancy keeps getting texts from her that are like, "This is not, I'm not achieving anything." Kind of like um, the Ned text in The Deadly Device, where he's like, "I found a penny and it fell in a puddle." It's kind of the same energy as that because Maya doesn't know how to investigate things.
Yeah, or like Bess texting about Sunny and Shadow the Medallion.
Oh my, yes.
Yes.
Or like, Nancy gets messages from Bess that are just pictures of Maya and she's like, sorry, she's not helping, she's eating with us.
Yep, sorry.
So this case that Nancy was supposed to be helping on, she's suddenly doing by herself.
Oh, wow.
So like she starts to find things, and then when she goes back to the park at one point, she finds that a new piece has been vandalized, and there's like this stained glass window thing hanging outside at the park somewhere. It's the best way I can think of to explain it, and it's been shattered. So Nancy has to kind of like stake out the park at night to figure out if she can see anyone coming or going. It's supposed to be closed after dark. She overhears
Yep.
an angry conversation
Ooh.
between Heather and Felicity. Heather is the one shouting, which is strange because up until this point she's been quiet. And I just forgot everything I was about to say again. I'm so sorry. The next morning, Nancy finds out that there are threats now that the World's Fair Pavilion is the next target of vandalism.
Oh, wow.
It all starts to kind of spiral out of control because it's kind of like the final scene where it's a race against the clock, and there's only a few days there that you can, figure out what's going on. So you have like 2 days to find who's going to vandalize it. And then there's the big showdown.
At the
And
end. Yep.
yeah.
So before we get into the end, um, are there any like ideas you might have for second chance sequences that might be fun for this?
Yeah.
I'm assuming since you can sneak into the art center, you might could get caught or break something and get asked to leave or whatever.
Yeah, those would be good ones. I thought one that would be really funny is when Nancy has to stake out Sculpture Park at night since there's that face in the ground that she falls into it and somehow gives herself a concussion.
Oh my gosh.
Like 3 feet deep, but we know if anybody could do it, it would be Nancy.
Of course.
So, like, the good news, bad news would be like, good news, the fall wasn't bad enough to kill you, but the bad news is you have no idea where you are. Or, like, she gets caught snooping behind John's desk and
Right.
gets asked to leave.
I wonder what John Mulaney quote would go with him catching her. Just have a John Mulaney quote as the good news, bad news.
That would be the perfect game if they were all just John Mulaney quotes.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That's so funny. Um, I feel like you could definitely at some point like break a piece of art somewhere.
Oh, yeah. Like, you could make one of the puzzles having to set up one of the displays and make sure that whoever's holding the piece of art up is secure and it all comes tumbling down and falls onto Nancy.
That would be scary.
It would.
And then I'm guessing we'll talk about the end in a minute, but there'll probably be one at the end of the game. Um, let's see. That sounds pretty on par with what I was thinking too in terms of where this is set and stuff. Um, so we'll talk about the end game sequence and the culprit and why are they the culprit and stuff like that.
So Nancy had been finding all of these like letters and finding out that stuff was really suspicious, and like she finds that John had a list that was encrypted of all the names of the artists whose pieces have been damaged.
Yeah.
So then she gets the letter that the pavilion is the next target, so she has to go do a stakeout. And can't decide if I think it's too funny or if it would be unnecessary for Bess and George to meet up with her for that point, because I could see
That
them
would be
being
fun.
helpful, or I could see Bess whispering things the entire time and being super distracting.
I want to see Bess do that, so we should have them there.
Okay, so they're there for it, and because this pavilion is pretty big, actually, so you might because somebody's shot, because it's a Nancy Drew game and they're dramatic, and more shouting. And what it comes down to is that she had won a spot in the park. It was pretty much a ripoff of Felicity, and Felicity found out about it
Ooh.
and was really angry and pretty much started telling her, if you don't get this out of the park, I'm going to ruin your career. Of to vandalize this pavilion was to like spray paint this century-old structure.
Yeah.
And then John shows up, very Scarlet Hand, like, where he's just suddenly there.
Like, you did it! That's all he has to say.
He gets there and he has no idea what's happening.
He's like, there's been a crime happening this whole time.
I know. Because I feel like he probably didn't know that this pavilion was going to be vandalized because it wasn't in his park, so he wasn't paying attention to it. So I have no idea why he'd be there. Other than like if he just decided to go for a stroll and wandered by it and was like, why is she in handcuffs? Why is the blonde one eating ice cream?
Why is why are they even here? Who is
So,
them?
because, you know, so like they arrest Heather for vandalism and then they find out that Felicity had been the kind of person behind the strings orchestrating everything and scaring her. So neither one of them get a piece in the park, and instead Poppy Dada just constructs like a giant shark.
Oh my god.
So the real winner is nobody involved.
And she's like, the art world is full of sharks, so I made this
Yes.
shark to represent it. Oh, that's so funny.
Orchestrates some really weird, vague meaning for it, and John's just like, this might as well happen.
Exactly.
If we're gonna make him quote John Mulaney, he has to say that at least twice.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So we're setting this all up with jealousy mimics. And see, one of the things that I liked best about Niobe's character was that she regretted like everything she did, you know? And
Yeah.
it's like, you know, maybe this isn't where really like regret. This is like purposeful, you know, so it's a lot different. Um so it's fun it's kind of cool to see that difference. Um yeah. So before we get into the final bit, do you have any other points that you want to add about what we just discussed?
Oof. I
Anything
don't
left
know.
out?
Like, I feel like I don't know. I keep thinking things and then forgetting them. So no, I don't think so.
Nice. Well, that was I enjoyed Nancy's return to St. Louis, and I enjoyed that Maya is not kidnapped this time.
I know.
And we have a character that may or may not be actual John Mulaney. So we are already at ideal game status right here because of John Mulaney. um, great. So the last section that I have for us to discuss is the final bit. The first of which being, what is the title of this game? Do you have one?
I tried to think of one and then I couldn't think of anything. I'm
Oh,
so bad with titles.
gosh. Wow, this one's hard. I don't want to have St. Louis in it. That's generic. Um, Goodness me. I, I do not know.
No.
This is hard. I feel like everything else was so easy, but this is the hard part. Oh, because I feel like something like
There's
The Dangers of the Art World is too stupid.
could be like Danger at Laumeier or something.
Danger at
Since that's
Ludlow?
the Laumeier, it's the name of the park.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I like Danger at Laumeier. I think that works great.
Also
Um,
kind of takes it back to like those early games like Danger on Deception Island where it's that's the kind of name. Might be a
yeah,
rip, but like it feels like it fits.
right. Um, so do you have any ideas of what the cover art would look like? One of the best parts of physical copies is that the cover art is always nice and fancy. What do you think that this cover art might look like? I
I
think it should
don't
have
know
some arch in it.
the arch, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe off to the side there's part of the pavilion or something.
Right, yeah.
Maybe the eye, and I once again can't decide if that's because I love Cry so much or because I think the eye is the first thing I think of when I remember that this park exists.
Yeah.
Just like have the eye on one side and the pavilion on the other and the arch like in the background somewhere.
Oh. And I think that like Maya should be there somewhere. Maybe like in the background. Like,
Yeah.
not like in the forefront, but like in like the corner or the background.
She's the mystery person on the cover this time.
Yeah, it's just Maya. Well, and then finally, like every game has a color, like a mood color and a disc color. So what color do you think that this game would be?
I think since it takes place in the fall, kind of, it should be one of those like earthy orange tones, maybe.
Yeah, I think the same thing. That or like yellowish, I think. Um,
And that would work really well too.
yeah, cool. So for our closing remarks today, um, we probably I'm gonna go real quick and Google some John Mulaney quotes and
Amazing.
figure out where these can be said in the game because that will be fun for the closing. Uh,
I think that like you know how in the newer games they've had the outtakes,
yeah,
the
those are
Gummy Bear Theater and stuff like that. I feel like one of those should be just John and Joe spouting John Mulaney quotes back and forth at each other.
right. Yeah, that's amazing. And when when he's like peak stressed out in the game, he'll be like, "I'll keep all my emotions right here, and then one day I'll die."
They all die.
uh, uh, and then she'll be
Which I
like,
feel like Frank
"Shouldn't-"
relates to a little too much.
Yeah, and then she'll be like, "Shouldn't you be working?" And he'll be like, "No, that's the thing I'm sensitive about."
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny.
Serious conversation is broken up by him saying a John Mulaney quote with absolute sincerity.
Yeah. I am very small and I have no money, so you can imagine the stress that I am under. That's the inspiration part. The whole reason this character exists.
Amazing.
And I feel like whenever Joe hears about John, he'll be like, "Hey, look at that high-waisted man. He got so many hits." And that's what Joe says about John. In the outtakes. Oh my gosh.
Joe finds out that John has no idea what's happening and just starts yelling street smarts every time he talks to him.
Yes. That is perfect. Wow. So this is definitely a game that needs to happen without any copyright infringement or anything like that. Just like it just happens. Nobody has to know anything about if it's actually John Mulaney or not. They're just gonna go for it.
That's the real mystery of the game.
Yes, like is this John Mulaney or not? That's the real mystery. uh, well, for this last couple of seconds, if you'll please state your name, your blog, and the title of this game you created once more, we will be all set.
Okay, my name is Alyssa. My blog on Tumblr is JOEHARDYSDRIFT, and this was Danger at Laumeier.
Yes, it was. Thank you, Alyssa, for coming on the podcast. I enjoyed having you and talking about our boy with you.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Yeah. And we will be back hopefully next week. Bye.